There are few witches in the wizarding world who can silence a room quite like Rita Skeeter, not with a curse, but with a quill. With a quick scribble from her Quick-Quotes Quill, reputations trembled, careers ended, truth blurred. And somewhere, behind a thick layer of lipstick and lime green fingernails, Rita Skeeter smiled with satisfaction. Hermione was certainly never shy in sharing what she thought of her. "You horrible woman. You don't care, do you? Anything for a story, and anyone will do, won't they?" But before the headlines, before the life and lies of Albus Dumbledore, and her smear campaigns against Harry Potter, who was Rita Skeeter? How did an ambitious Hogwarts student turn into the most reviled journalist of her age? Today we'll dive into all of that and more as we look at the life and lies of Rita Skeeter. Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. Rita Skeeter was born in the year 1951 to two half-blood parents. While we don't know too much about her parents, we do know that they were alive during her Hogwarts years. From a young age, Rita developed a fascination with attention, who had it, how they got it, and how easily it could be taken away. And even before she first set foot in Hogwarts, Rita had learned that being noticed was a form of power. When she finally got to school, she quickly gained a reputation for her sharp tongue and keener instincts. While others were mastering spells, Rita was busy mastering people, observing their weaknesses, testing boundaries, and collecting secrets. While her house is never actually confirmed in canon, her ambition and cunning have led many to suspect Slytherin, which I personally believe most closely aligns with her nature. However, some have argued that she more closely fits the profile of a Ravenclaw, citing her intelligence and skill with language. But whatever the truth, she possessed a rare blend of wit and ruthlessness, a combination that would later define her career. Rita realized early on that influence didn't always come from prestige or power. Sometimes it came from knowing more than everyone else. And if she couldn't join the powerful, she could at least make herself indispensable to them. Sometime during or after her Hogwarts years, Rita achieved something few other witches dared attempt. She became an unregistered Animagus, taking the form of a beetle. Insect-sized and unnoticed, she could infiltrate private conversations, offices, and even the walls of Hogwarts itself. And where others saw ethical lines, Rita saw opportunity. What makes this particularly remarkable is just how difficult achieving such a transformation truly is. Becoming an Animagus is among the most complex and dangerous feats in magical transfiguration, a process so demanding that even the most gifted witches and wizards rarely attempt it. It requires perfect precision in both potions and transfiguration, months of discipline, and an almost obsessive attention to detail. One misstep can result in a catastrophic half-human, half-animal mutation, a condition with no known cure. The transformation demands carrying a mandrake leaf in one's mouth for an entire lunar cycle, brewing a potion under lightning, speaking a sacred incantation twice a day, and maintaining unbroken concentration for weeks on end. Most fail before they ever reach the final stage, their nerve or their sanity giving out first. The fact that Rita not only completed this process, but did so in secret, without the ministry's registration or supervision, speaks volumes about her cunning and her sheer magical aptitude. She wasn't just nosy, she was dangerously skilled. Notably, however, Rita did not register herself as an Animagus, which for the record is completely illegal. According to wizarding law, anyone who can transform into an animal has to report it to the Ministry of Magic. There's even an entire register that lists each Animagus's animal form and any unique markings, all handled through the improper use of Magic Office. Hermione explains this in Prisoner of Azkaban. The Ministry of Magic keeps tabs on witches and wizards who can become animals. There's a register showing what animal they become and their markings and things, and there have only been 7 Animagi this century. When someone doesn't register, it's a big deal. It basically means they can go anywhere, spy on anyone, and vanish without a trace. By staying off the books, she could slip into private meetings, overhear confidential conversations, and dig up gossip that no one else could reach. It wasn't just sneaky, it was genius. Illegal, sure, but genius. And for Rita, being an unregistered Animagus wasn't about breaking the law. It was about getting the story, no matter the cost. When she finally left the school, she pursued power through storytelling, leveraging her stories as weapons. In the years following Hogwarts, Rita began making a name for herself as a journalist and biographer. One of her earliest known works was Armando Dippet, Master or Moron, a scandalous and highly critical book about the former headmaster of Hogwarts. Based on the tone of her later writings, it's fair to say that it was probably an exaggerated and sensationalized history of Dippet's life, carefully written to stir outrage, spark debate, and most importantly, sell. And the strategy worked. The book became a bestseller, with countless copies sold across the wizarding world, establishing Rita as someone who understood that controversy was the fastest route to fame. By the time of the First Wizarding War, Rita was already an established journalist. While much of the wizarding world lived in fear of Lord Voldemort's rise to power, she continued to thrive in the chaos, publishing inflammatory pieces that blurred the line between truth and rumor. To Rita, the world's descent into darkness wasn't a tragedy, it was an opportunity. Her talent for embellishment and her willingness to twist the truth for attention made her one of the Prophet's most notorious contributors. Wizards and witches soon learned to fear seeing their names appear under her byline. A Rita Skeeter exclusive meant one thing: humiliation was coming. And all the while, her unregistered Animagus form gave her eyes and ears in places no journalist could reach. Behind every exclusive quote or unnamed source was a beetle on a windowsill. In the years following Voldemort's first downfall, Rita's influence only grew. The wizarding world, still reeling from war and desperate for normalcy, turned to the Daily Prophet for answers, and Rita gave them stories. Throughout the 1980s and early 1990s, she built her reputation as the Prophet's most provocative voice, penning exposés, biographies, and hit pieces that blurred the line between reporting and entertainment. Following the reappearance of the Dark Mark after the 1994 Quidditch World Cup, Rita immediately put quill to parchment and published a scathing report condemning the Ministry of Magic's handling of the riots. Most notably, she accused officials of incompetence for failing to catch any of the culprits, stirring public outrage at a time when the wizarding world was already on edge. Ministry blunders, culprits not apprehended, lax security, dark wizards running unchecked. National disgrace. The article caused chaos inside the ministry, but Rita's career thrived on controversy, and she knew exactly how to create it. And with the public's attention fixed firmly on Hogwarts and the newly revived Triwizard Tournament, Rita saw her next big story, one that would make her a household name all over again. With the Triwizard Tournament officially underway, Rita Skeeter descended on Hogwarts like a vulture. Officially, she was there to provide exclusive coverage for the Daily Prophet, but in truth, she was there to capitalize on the event and turn it into her own personal spectacle. Armed with her enchanted Quick-Quotes Quill, Rita churned out sensationalized stories faster than anyone could stop her. What began as simple tournament coverage quickly spiraled into scandal. Her first major target was Harry Potter, the unexpected fourth champion. She painted him as unstable and attention-seeking, twisting his words into melodrama and exploiting every moment of discomfort she could capture. Her interview with him began innocently enough, but the quill had other ideas. Tears fill those startlingly green eyes as our conversation turns to the parents he can barely remember. But she didn't stop there, as Hermione Granger quickly became another favorite subject. Framed as manipulative and deceitful, a Scarlet Woman supposedly toying with both Harry Potter and Victor Crumb. And then there was Hagrid, whose half-giant heritage Rita exposed in one of her most damaging pieces. Published in the Daily Prophet under the headline, "Half-Giant at Hogwarts, How Long Can Dumbledore Keep Him?", the story caused an uproar across the wizarding world. And overnight, Hagrid, one of Hogwarts' kindest and most loyal figures, became the subject of suspicion and fear. Each article followed the same formula, a sliver of truth buried beneath layers of exaggeration and outright lies. Her ability to obtain information no one else could access, thanks to her secret beetle form, made her articles almost impossible to trace. She'd slip into tents, hide behind desks, and crawl through cracks in the stone walls of Hogwarts, overhearing conversations meant for no one's ears. At one point, Harry, Ron, and Hermione overheard her plotting an embarrassing story about Ludo Bagman, head of the Department of Magical Games and Sports. But it was her Witch Weekly feature Harry Potter's secret heartache, torn between two women, that truly cemented her reputation as the most unscrupulous journalist in the wizarding world. When the trio later encountered her in Hogsmeade, Hermione didn't hold back, openly calling Rita out for her lies. In retaliation, Rita published a particularly cruel piece about the devious Miss Granger, claiming Hermione was a plain but manipulative witch who had bewitched both Harry Potter and Victor Crumb with love potions to satisfy her taste for famous wizards. The story, based on gossip from Pansy Parkinson, quickly spread through the wizarding world. Hermione, usually too rational to be shaken by rumors, began receiving angry letters, some even hexed by readers who believed Rita's lies. Even Molly Weasley briefly believed the article's insinuations until Harry personally set her straight. But eventually, Rita Skeeter's downfall came not from the Ministry, whose scandals she so often exploited, but from the very girl she had so maliciously smeared, Hermione Granger, who eventually uncovered Rita's secret Animagus form and captured her in a jar during one of her Beetle eavesdropping sessions. "Oh, Rita hasn't written anything at all since the third task," said Hermione in an oddly constrained voice. As a matter of fact, she added, her voice now trembling slightly, "Rita Skeeter isn't going to be writing anything at all for a while. Not unless she wants me to spill the beans on her. No, you see, Rita Skeeter," Hermione's voice trembled with quiet triumph, "is an unregistered Animagus. She can turn..." Hermione pulled a small sealed glass jar out of her bag. "Into a beetle." "You're kidding," said Ron. "You haven't... She's not..." "No, I'm not," said Hermione, beaming. "I caught her on the windowsill in the hospital wing. Look very closely and you'll notice the markings around her antenna are exactly like those foul glasses she wears." Hermione took the glass jar back from Ron and smiled at the beetle, which buzzed angrily against the glass. "I've told her I'll let her out when we get back to London," said Hermione. "I've put an unbreakable charm on the jar, you see, so she can't transform. And I've told her she's to keep her quill to herself for a whole year. See if she can't break the habit of writing horrible lies about people." Faced with ruin, Rita reluctantly agreed not to write a single word for an entire year. And for nearly a year, Rita was silent. Hermione's blackmail had worked. No more gossip columns, no more exposés, no more headlines twisting the truth. But by 1996, Rita found herself drawn back into the story she'd once helped distort, the return of Lord Voldemort. When Harry's claims about Voldemort's resurrection were dismissed by the Daily Prophet as the ramblings of an attention-seeking liar, Hermione saw an opportunity. If the prophet wouldn't tell the truth, she'd make sure someone did, and that someone, ironically, would be Rita Skeeter. Meeting her in the Three Broomsticks on Valentine's Day, Hermione confronted the woman who had once called her devious and plain. The exchange was tense and bitter. When Rita realized Hermione wanted her to publish Harry's full account of Voldemort's return, she was stunned, and more than a little resentful. She insisted that the Daily Prophet would never run it, admitting, perhaps for the first time, that the Ministry was controlling what the public read. That was when Hermione made her offer. The interview would appear in the Quibbler, Luna Lovegood's father's eccentric magazine. Rita scoffed at the idea, calling it rubbish, but one quiet reminder of her unregistered Animagus status changed her mind. The result was one of the most significant pieces of journalism in the wizarding world's history: Harry Potter, The Truth at Last. For once, Rita wrote exactly what was said. No embellishment, no spin. The article exposed Voldemort's return, Dolores Umbridge's cruelty, and the Ministry's corruption. It became the Quibbler's best-selling issue of all time. Ironically, when Umbridge banned the magazine at Hogwarts, it only made it more popular. And when Voldemort's return was finally confirmed, editor Xenophilius Lovegood sold the rights to the Daily Prophet, funding a Lovegood family expedition to Sweden in search of the crumple-horned Snorkak. For a brief moment, Rita Skeeter told the truth, not out of conviction, but out of coercion. And though she likely hated every word of it, her reluctant honesty helped turn the tide against the Ministry's lies. Following her coerced comeback in the Quibbler, Rita Skeeter faded once again from the public eye. The interview she'd been forced to write, Harry Potter's detailed account of Voldemort's return, had restored his credibility, but it did nothing to rebuild hers. For Rita, the experience was humiliating. She'd gone from being the prophet's most notorious voice to a disgraced reporter working under the threat of exposure. But Rita Skeeter was nothing if not tenacious. In June of 1997, Rita attended the funeral of Albus Dumbledore at Hogwarts. Harry spotted her among the mourners, and was infuriated to see her clutching her notebook in her red taloned hand. Even in that moment of collective grief, Rita was working, and perhaps it was there, surrounded by the sorrow and reverence that followed Dumbledore's death, that her next big idea was born. Within just 4 weeks, she released a 900-page biography titled The Life and Lies of Albus Dumbledore. The book painted him in an extremely negative light, implying that Dumbledore had dabbled in the dark arts, pursued power for its own sake, and even shared responsibility for his sister Ariana's death. As usual, Rita's research relied on half-truths and dubious ethics. She had interviewed the elderly historian Batilda Bagshot, reportedly under the influence of Veritaserum, and even stolen photographs from her home to use in the book. Later, Rita promoted her biography with trademark flair, serving tea and pound cake to Daily Prophet reporter Betty Braithwaite while gleefully recounting gossip about Dumbledore's private life. While much of her material was exaggerated or taken out of context, some of it, disturbingly, was true. She had unearthed fragments of Dumbledore's past, but lacked any understanding of their meaning. She falsely claimed that Ariana Dumbledore was a squib, whose mother was ashamed of her, when in reality, Ariana had suffered uncontrollable bouts of magic after a traumatic attack by Muggle boys. Rita's writing dipped with false sympathy and veiled contempt, describing Dumbledore as a gifted but dangerously ambitious man who loved power for its own sake. Many dismissed it as another of her sensationalist hit pieces, but others devoured every page. Even in death, Albus Dumbledore had become her greatest headline. By the time the Second Wizarding War ended in 1998, Rita Skeeter had once again cemented her place as the most controversial voice in wizarding journalism, despised by many but read by all. She never regained true credibility, but she never really needed it. Scandal was her currency, and she spent it freely. In the end, Rita Skeeter didn't need a wand to wield power, just a quill, a lie, and a world all too eager to believe it. While the Ministry of Magic underwent sweeping reforms, freedom of the press, for better or worse, stayed intact, and Rita wasted no time exploiting it. In the years immediately following the war, she returned to what she did best, turning truth into entertainment. Capitalizing on the chaos of the post-Voldemort world, Rita released not one, but 2 more biographies. The first, a supposed exposé on Harry Potter himself, was so wildly inaccurate that even her publishers admitted it was only about 1/4 true. The second, Snape, Scoundrel or Saint, attempted to cash in on public fascination with Severus Snape's redemption, dissecting his life in her signature half-truth-laden style. And by the time of the 2014 Quidditch World Cup, Rita was as sharp-tongued as ever, publishing a now infamous gossip column mocking what she called the so-called Golden Trio. In it, she speculated about Harry's greying hair, Hermione's supposed political ambitions, and Ron's midlife crisis. Rita never faced any real legal consequences. She wasn't arrested, tried, or sent to Azkaban, because technically, most of what she did was awful but not illegal. She'd always operated in that perfect grey area between truth and libel, and the post-war ministry, determined to preserve civil liberties, let her keep publishing. In short, Rita Skeeter never got justice, but she did get exactly what she wanted: attention, influence, and a very long career. Proof, perhaps, that gossip, no matter how poisonous, never really goes out of style. And that's it for this video. What do you want me to cover next? Any more biographies you'd like? Let me know down in the comment section below. Until next time, remember, it does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live.